All right, here's a nice question. Again, it's dealing with transformations. So they say they have a function, y is equal to f of x, and then they take that function and transform it into g of x, or I guess it's not g of x, but they transform it into f of negative 1/2 x. So what they want us to do is to graph that. Now, the best way to do it that I've found is to find points that are on the first graph. So there's a point there, it's minus 4, 0. And then there's another point right beside it, minus 3, 2. And then there's a minus 2, 2. That's that one. And then a 0, 0. And a 3 and a negative 1, it looks like. And the last point is 4, 0. So those are all points that are on the original graph. So what I need to do is need to figure out how this one has changed. So when I look, this negative 1/2 is in the B spot, right? A is usually out front, and then C would be in there somewhere, and D would be out back. So that's a B value. So what the effect of that is going to be, it's going to shrink or stretch on the x-axis, so a horizontal stretch or shrink, and the negative sign is going to make it flip over this y-axis. So I can sort of maybe try and do it just sort of looking at the points and saying, okay, it has to flip over the y-axis, and then the b values, something has to happen to them. And that's where I get caught a little bit. The b values, what you want to do with those is you want to divide all of the x values by whatever b is. So there's an x value, there's an x, it's always the first one, right? Now notice there's no other transformations. There's no A, there's no C, there's no D. So that's the only transformation that's happening, is that B one. So B says divide x values by negative 1/2. So if I take negative 4 and divide it by negative 1/2, that'll be negative 4 times 2, or negative 2 over 1. The two negatives cancel. This will give me 8. So this new point, I'm not changing the y value at all, but the x value, the negative 4 becomes 8 and 0. The y value doesn't change. So there's my first point. This point there is transformed into that point there. And then I just do the same thing with all of them. So negative 3 divided by negative 1/2 would be a positive 6 and 2. The y value would stay. So 6 and 2 would be about there. Okay, negative 2 divided by negative 1/2. I gotta figure that. Negative 2 divided by negative 1/2. It's the same as negative 2 times negative 2 over 1, or positive 4. So this is going to be a positive 4 and 2. Okay, positive 4 and 2. It looks like it is stretching out the graph a bit. Let's finish. Okay, 0 divided by negative 1/2. 0 divided by anything is still just 0. And the y value doesn't change. So this point is the same. So my graph is looking like this, and then like that, and then like that. Notice it's sort of backwards to this one because it's reflected on this y-axis. And it's also stretched out a little bit because of that negative 1/2. Next point, 3 divided by negative 1/2 would be a negative 6. Whoops. So negative 6 and negative 1. Negative 6 and negative 1. That's that point right about there. And then the last one, 4 divided by negative 1/2 will be a negative 8. So negative 8, 0. Negative 8, 0, right there. There's my last thing. So if you look at the graph, this graph compared to this graph, this new one is flipped over this y-axis, and it's stretched out some. And that's what we thought. Flipped over the y-axis, I think, did I say x? Flip over the y-axis and divide all the x's by a half. All right, hopefully that helps you with that one.